Hi, Mike Barrett here again from testingiseasy.com. And in this video I want to have a very serious discussion about the necessity of using real test questions in your preparation. Now this is a thing I've mentioned many times in my life to many people. And if you've been paying attention to these videos, you've probably heard it mentioned in other places as well. But for the life of me, I can't understand why it is that people continue to use non-real questions in their preparation. The smart way to approach any standardized test is to focus on the standardization, to focus on the rules that the questions have to follow. These rules are, in some cases, quite obvious, but in other cases, really not that obvious. And so to be safe, you always want to make sure that you're practicing with the genuine article. That way you know that any kind of instinct you build up as far as maybe you notice that on this type of question, whenever the test says blah, 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 the answer choice is always blah, 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 or whatever it is. Any kinds of instincts like that you build up will be valid and useful in the future if you build them up using real practice questions actually written by the people who make whatever test it is you're studying for. This should be kind of an obvious thing, but so many people think that standardized tests are about the subject matter or the supposed subject matter of the test, that they don't really care, if they're using a real question or not, because they think they're going to get better at the test by learning what the test supposedly covers, instead of by actually exploiting the weakness in the design of the test itself, which is, by the way, pretty much the only way to get better at a standardized test, assuming that you have some sort of base level of familiarity with the basic concepts that can appear on the test. Anyway, so I had kind of a policy up until now of not specifically calling out other testing preparation companies whenever I could avoid it, because I don't know, I just kind of like to play nice in general. But see, here's the thing. There are a couple of companies out there, one of them I will name in just a minute, who are disseminating such bad stuff so widely that it's beginning to affect my life. I'll work with a student and I'll explain, look for this and this and this, and only use real questions and so on. And then the student will go off and use, actually I'll just say it, they'll go off and use this book right here, Cracking the PSAT by the Princeton Review. And this book will provide questions that do things that real PSAT questions don't do. And the student comes to me and says, hey, you told me, XYZ wasn't going to be on the test, but I took a practice PSAT this weekend and it was. And I'll be like, where did your practice PSAT come from? And they'll be like, the Princeton Review. And I'll be like, that's why you shouldn't do that. that exact reason right there. Anyway, so the last PSAT round of preparation or whatever that I did, for some reason I saw way more of this than I've ever seen in the past. I don't know if maybe the Princeton Review had a very successful marketing drive or something this year, whatever it was. I saw it so much that I felt that I should mention it to you so that you know to be on the lookout for this type of thing. So on, what page is it? On page 193 of the 2010 Cracking the PSAT NumSquit, which is my cute way to say PSAT NMSQT, PSAT NumSquit. It's a lot faster, right? Anyway, so on this, page 193, the text says, and I quote, reading voice, me. Last but not least, ETS prefers sentences written in the active voice to sentences written in the passive voice. So, basically, the Princeton Review book is telling you that if you have the option to choose something that's active instead of passive, and if everything else checks out, you should go ahead and do that. What this has led to, at least among my students, is a sort of general hysteria about when things are in the active voice versus when they are in the passive voice. And so they try to learn these rules, they try to apply them to the test, they look for questions where it might come up, whatever it is. Now, in general, it's a good thing for you to know what the active voice is versus the passive voice. I mean, it's a useful thing to understand, certainly. I'm sure that most of your English teachers or English professors would tell you that they prefer things in the active voice rather than the passive voice. All of that's fine. The problem is that doesn't actually appear on the PSAT. You don't actually have to know to choose active versus passive to do well on the PSAT. And to demonstrate this fact, I took the liberty of compiling a short list of questions directly out of the College Board's SAT preparation book. By the way, the SAT and PSAT writing questions, all the same questions. So yeah, I just went through here. I found the questions that violate this idea, questions where either the passive voice was not incorrect, or in some cases, questions in which you had like an improving sentences thing, and you had to compare different versions of the sentence, and the passive voice won out over other active voice ones. So it's really important for you to understand, if you're going to take the SAT or the PSAT, the College Board does not care about the passive voice thing at all, which I have helpfully indicated with my little helper TV screen right there behind me. So do not worry about active voice and passive voice on a College Board test, because the College Board is not worrying about them. And if you make that part of what you consider for the questions, you only run the risk that you will think about things wrong. Here, by the way, whoops, no, not here. Technology, come on. Here, there we go. Here is a list of questions, and it's not by any means an exhaustive list of questions, it's just some of the questions that I found in this book. I stopped after I filled up this screen. All of these questions are questions in which the College Board has seen no problem whatsoever with the usage of the passive voice. Again, in several cases, these are questions in which the College Board chooses a passive voice thing, or the correct answer is a passive voice thing, over an active voice thing. There are also questions in here where a passive voice phrase is underlined in an identifying sentence errors question, and there's nothing wrong with it, and so on. So if your teacher or your textbook or whoever has been telling you to pay attention to passive and active voice issues on the SAT and PSAT, kindly tell them to stop wasting your time, because it's just not there on the test. So pages on page 410, questions 20, 24, 26, 429 number 3, 471 12, 16 and 19 also on that page, and 491 number 3, and 532, 533 numbers 8 and 12. And again, I mean, that's just the first like 2 tests I think in the book. I certainly didn't look at every single question even in those tests, so there's probably even more of them in there. These are just some questions that are like that, and if you wanted to keep going, you could find more. So I hope you can sort of start to see the damage that could be done to your score, but also to your free time, if you try to study and learn about things that are not actually going to be on the test. You want to study only the things that will actually appear on the actual SAT. I mean, this should be obvious. I don't know why it's not. But anyways, so, and I don't mean not obvious to you. I mean not obvious to the people who make these preparation materials. I don't know why someone would tell you to prepare for something that's like clearly not on the test, unless they just weren't paying attention to it, or who knows what. Anyway, so please, please, please do us both a favor and study what's actually on the test. Get good at that stuff. Don't worry about the things that are not on the test, you know, and don't just assume that because it's a well-known testing company, or because it's your tutor, or because it's whoever, they must be correct, because obviously it's not always the case, right? Anyway, remember, always use real questions. This is a great example of why, and if you were filling up your head with thoughts of active and passiveness or activeness, or whatever it is. Anyway, if you're thinking about those things for the SAT and the PSAT, I hereby advise you not to do that anymore, unless you just like wasting your time, in which case, please go for it. So that again is Mike Barrett, or I am Mike Barrett. Somebody somewhere in here, something is Mike Barrett for testingiseasy.com, and I wish you the best of luck. And I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.